guys have introduced yourselves in the chat, so why don't I go ahead and introduce myself and the folks who are here to facilitate with me and who have had a major role in helping to develop this workshop based on our experiences in organizing in real life. My name is Jen Hampton, and I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. I've been here for 17 years. I'm originally from South Texas, which you can probably hear when I say Texas. And I am a founding member and co-chair of Asheville Food and Beverage United, which is a citywide service workers union. We organize people across the city into one big union so that we have a base of power in restaurants and bars and breweries all over the city. And we can talk more about that later if we have time. I don't want to take up too much time talking about that, but yeah, and I'm also the housing and wages organizer for Just Economics, a local nonprofit that works on economic justice and social justice issues. I organize tenants through NC Tenants Union as part of my job, and I also facilitate the Western North Carolina chapter of the Workers Assembly. So basically, I'm just organizing everybody around whatever issue it is that they care most about and want to get active around. And here with me today is Miranda Escalante, and Miranda is going to be working with Rose, who is also here. And Miranda is on the steering committee for Asheville Food and Beverage United, is a longtime veteran of the food and beverage industry, I think over 20 years, right here in Asheville, and is a powerhouse organizer, has a lot of information and knowledge to share and experience. Rose is going to stay off camera tonight because they are currently organizing a union drive at a local restaurant that is still very hush hush. And so we don't want to risk anybody seeing their face or their actual name tonight and giving away the work that we're doing. And then Thorn, a very good friend Thorn, is going to be co-presenting with me tonight. Thorn has been a wealth of information and inspiration for me over the past year and a half that I've known them, and I'm very grateful for their input and help with this. And then Jim Barton, I think, is here in the room. There's Jim. Hi, Jim. Jim is going to also be one of the facilitators in the breakout room later on. Jim is also a founding member of Asheville Food and Beverage United and has been mentoring me since day one, even before I really knew that I wanted to be an organizer, let alone in any kind of leadership position. He saw it in me before I saw it in myself, and I'm very grateful for him being here and for his mentorship. So thank you so much. And with those introductions, how about we get started on this organizing training? So, Organizing 101. This is going to be the first in a series of organizing trainings that are designed to be an introduction to the basics of organizing. Like I said earlier, the nuts and bolts. How do we do it? And in this session, we're going to talk about what organizing is, why we organize, who do we organize with. We're going to talk a little bit about getting started mapping, and I'll explain more what that means when we get to that section. And then we're going to be talking in depth about organizing conversations, or I should say structured organizing conversations, because there is a structure, and using those organizing conversations to move people into action. And with that, let's go ahead over to the first slide, shall we? So first off, what is organizing? What do we even mean by that? When I tell people sometimes I'm an organizer, they think organizing closets or, something like that, which isn't too far from what this type of organizing is. It's basically the process of identifying and grouping the work to be done, delegating responsibility, and establishing relationships to enable people to work most effectively together to get things done. So in other words, it is what needs to be done, who can do it, and making connections with each other to get it done together. Thorn, did you have anything that you wanted to add here on this part?
Hey y'all. just wanted to underscore that relationships are really like foundational to this kind of work. And as much as people might agree with us or not agree with us, it comes down, in my experience, just as much, if not more, than political ideas to a point. As having demonstrated that we like are genuine and sincere and legitimately care about our coworkers and fellow workers' interests and concerns. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Um, Miranda or Jim, did y'all have anything you wanted to add here? Just checking. Okay. All right. So, question for the whole group. Um, why do we organize? Right? That's the big question. Why we do this? It's a lot of work, and we're all here to learn how to do it. So, why? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat about why do you think we organize, or go ahead and come off of mute and let us know what you think. Why do we organize? And I'm going to embrace awkward silence to give everybody a time to think about talking.
Well, I mean,
And
organizing, I think, is the only real way to have any kind of political power, especially here in the United States, with
mhm.
like, bourgeois elections and stuff like that. A lot of people seem to think that that's all politics is, that it's just you put in a ballot in a box every 4 years and continue to go to brunch and not care about things. But, it takes more than that. It takes building stuff. And I think it's important to do that, especially if we want to have the world that we want to have instead of the world that's just given to us. Uh,
Very well said. Absolutely. Is your name Tiari? Is that how you
yes,
say it? Okay.
yes,
Thank
thank you.
you for speaking up. Um,
Uh,
anybody who can see the chat, if anybody's piping in there. Felipe, go ahead.
Hi. I've been organizing rideshare drivers in Boston, Massachusetts, and then moved to Atlanta 3 years ago. I'm organizing to give the rideshare drivers a voice, give the workers a voice that it's an uh, unheard workers. We don't have a right to say anything. We don't work together. It's very difficult to organize gig workers and rideshare drivers because we work in our vehicles. So
Hmm.
it's extremely daunting. And we're doing it to give ourselves a voice and to get a collective voice for us to get what we want. But it's extremely difficult, especially with gig workers. So giving workers a voice. Thank you.
Giving workers a voice, absolutely. Think we can take one
May
more?
may I?
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Miss Priscilla Smith from National Domestic Workers Alliance. We Dream Black and also Altiana's nonprofit. I think we organize the most on things that impact our daily lives that we need to see a significant change in because coming together as a unit allows us to strengthen numbers to make the change, as the young lady said, in the political world, but also to make a change in our everyday world with our families and our household environments to make things improve for us.
Absolutely. Um, great. Well, thank y'all so much for sharing. I can't see the chat, so I don't know if anybody has offered anything in there.
There are some things in the chat, Jen. I can read through them real quick if
Yeah, that'd be great. And then we can move on. Thank you.
cool. So a couple things. I'm not going to say who they're from, but uh, let me get back down. Sorry. Uh, People said collective power to build power to work towards collective power. There's power in a collective. Power is a theme. We're stronger
Yep.
together. The power structures that control us are organized already. um, accountability, uh, to, as a faith leader, having a moral obligation to lift up the needs of workers. It's necessary to be organized to have a chance to create lasting change. Someone said the boss is organized and we should be too.
Heck yeah. Right on. Well, to me, sounds like you guys know why we organize to build power because we need to build power so that we can change the world that we live in, make it better for not just ourselves, but for each other, for all of us. And I feel like you guys, you nailed it. Everybody, and Ben, you're right. The theme was to build power, and that's what we need to do. Because that's the only way we have power is with our collective voices. So another question for y'all. Who do we organize with? We can take a couple of answers here. Who do you feel like it's important to organize with?
I mean, but preferably, you should be organizing with people who have like-minded goals as yours. I don't think, a lot of arguments people have about quote unquote the left is that we don't throw enough marginalized people under the bus and that we scare people away by siding with but it's like those are your people. You don't throw them under, like, what's the point, Those,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're not going to get what you want by, you know, siding with the people that are oppressing you and going, oh, here, have them instead, kind of.
Right.
So I think
Aligning your fight with people who have the same struggles, right?
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. So basically, there is no organizing without people, right? We have to have people. So who are your people? That's the important thing to think about when you're organizing. And though it is important to organize with like-minded people, I have found in my work that there are some people that maybe we don't have all of the same, thoughts and ideas, but we can align our fights where it matters to both of us. There's like some people in our local, CLC that maybe we don't agree on every issue, but we agree on the same like workers' rights issues and aligning our fights where it matters most really is the best way to build power. Now, I'm not talking about aligning with fascists or racists or bigots or anything like that. Obviously, that you can't align with that because they're the ones who are oppressing those who are marginalized and being oppressed. So fellow workers, be it your coworkers that you work with, or maybe it's workers who work in other businesses who you're trying to maybe build an assembly with, trying to help them build an organizing committee. Your neighbors. I organize tenants here in Western North Carolina, and a lot of people are organizing with their neighbors to fight back against undesirable living conditions or bad landlords, just whatever it is, or to save a local pool. That's happening here. People are aligning with their neighbors to save a historic public pool in your community, whatever community you're a part of. You'll find people that you might need to organize with for a common goal. Um, Thorn, did you have anything to add to this section?
Sorry, I'm using Zoom on my phone and it's a little clunky. Um, just like, I mean, I think a couple people in the chat spoke to this in the previous section, but like having an understanding that like the vast majority of people you see every day are people in like pretty similar conditions and dealing with like almost identical struggles. There's
Mm-hmm.
obviously exceptions, but like in the Industrial Workers of the World Union, we talked like folks talk a lot about like your fellow workers, and they refer to other union members as fellow workers, trying to express like a kind of a more universal understanding that like most people have to work for a living, or we end up on the
Hmm.
street, like the vast majority of human beings. So like right there, we already have a lot in common with it, with especially with the people that live where we are and work
Hmm.
where we are, like in similar industries. So yeah, like just push. I think it's important to push ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit. And, even if we don't like totally align on everything, like if we focus on our like material interests at least as much as we focus on like the ideas that we have about them, like I think that we can really build a lot of solid foundations with people in this work. Thanks.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point. Whether it is your fellow workers or your neighbors or community members, if people are the vast majority of people in this country are working class people. So that's who we organize with. And like I said earlier, organize people around whatever issue it is that they care most about, to get them to get into or action. Okay, so now we know what organizing is, why we organize, and who our people are, our fellow workers. How do we get started? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm here to help facilitate and answer that question. Um, for me, having a visual representation of the work that needs to be done is major because I have all this stuff in my head. It's all over the place and it's just a mess in there. So I'd like to take it out and put it in a chart of some kind and color code it. Everything in my world is charted and color coded because that's just helps my brain. So this is an example of a very simple map. um, Rose, who is going to be helping facilitate and role play later on, has been using a map very similar to this to map their workplace. And they've been working on it with their coworkers for a couple of months. And it is a slow going process because you have to be meticulous and you have to have organizing conversations and assess people. So basically, you see, you've got a column for names, and then you've got numbers 0 through 5, and then a column for issues. And what this is basically a visual representation of where everybody is and what they care about. So, and this is not like a hard and fast rule of how you want to number and structure your own map. It can be an actual representation of your workplace. I know the nurses here at Mission Hospital are unionized and they have actual like maps of the workplace because people work in different um, departments. And so they have it mapped out and then they have people, listed in each area. So basically, um, through your organizing conversations, which we're going to get into next, how you do that, you're going to be assessing people and figuring out where to place them on your map. From 0 being, I don't know, I haven't talked to them yet, so I can't really say. 1 being, they are going to organize against your organizing. So we're going to be very careful to not engage too much with them, especially at first. 2 is they're just against organizing. Maybe they're uneducated about it. Maybe, like many people down here in the South, we've been miseducated about what it means to organize labor, right? Um, and then 3 is they're like, well, I don't know how I really feel about it right now. So they're going to take, some time to think about it. And you're going to take time to talk to them and convince them to move. 4 is they're like, yeah, organizing sounds great. I think maybe I'll get involved. I think it's a good idea. And 5 is pro-organizing leader. These are the ones they're like, you know what? Absolutely. I am so down to organize. Let's get going. What can I do to help? And they're going to be the ones who are going to help you start mapping your workplace and have conversations with other workers. Um, Rose, do you want to add anything to this since you're actively doing this right now?
I would say for me, it's been a lot of assessing and reassessing, um,
Hmm.
gaining information. It feels like like what Thorn was saying earlier, it's about building relationships, and you'll talk to people multiple times and gain more and more information. And yeah, it's really about building relationships and getting to know people and where they're coming from so that you can assess them. Assessing is the goal, but it's definitely not the where the that like how you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen, I think
Yeah.
you'll on
Mm-hmm.
this later, but to Rose's point, the follow-up. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about just one conversation, it's about multiple conversations, being comfortable having those possibly uncomfortable conversations with your coworkers or your community members, and just knowing that, like, well, I had that conversation one time, but I may have to have this conversation 10 times.
Yes, excellent point. Thank you. And yeah, it can be uncomfortable sometimes, but I always say, yeah, I'm awkward and I'm just gonna embrace being awkward because we're all kind of awkward anyways. Thorn, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, this is a bit of maybe an extreme example, but when I was organizing a preschool up in Virginia, um, like we had some, like the campaign did not succeed. Nobody got fired because of it. But anyway, we had a few people that were interested, but were still warming up to like whether it was something that could really work. But the weirdest thing happened, like a person who had been raised like by Marxists and was herself like very familiar with leftist ideas was sadly not convinced that a union would improve things or be like the right approach for the
Hmm.
workplace. And like a year or two later, she ended up like moving across the country and getting a different job. Like she was still in education, but like she was just pretty focused on her own career and
Hmm.
like didn't really feel like sticking around to apply like the stuff that she already knew about. So, you know,
Hmm.
like for me, that's part of the context. Like when we talk about like, we don't have to have like total ideological alignment with people. That like that can sometimes work out really well if somebody's already really familiar with the ideas that we have. But like, it's not a guarantee that somebody's ideas will translate into their commitment and perspective.
Or
Um,
actions.
yeah, exactly. So
Hmm.
thanks.
Thank you for that context. And one more thing about this map that it's on here and I kind of mentioned it, but it's super important in your mapping to have this column for issues. Because in the next training, we're going to talk about taking issues and turning them into a campaign. But right now, yeah, and during your mapping process, you're just keeping track because you're going to want to find out what the most widely and deeply felt issue is. You'll hear that term a lot in organizer training spaces because that's what's going to move the most people, which is what's going to help you build powers by moving the most people. I'll give you a brief example. When we first started building Asheville Food and Beverage United, we were going out canvassing and we had our platform. We were going to talk about living wages and paid time off and fair scheduling. We're like, yeah, that's what everybody cares about. Um, but I went to the organizing conversations training and learned that I needed to listen instead of just tell them what we're doing. So I started listening and I discovered that people were like, yeah, those issues are important, but what about parking? People were paying like $200 to $300 a month for parking. And if they couldn't afford, and this was to go to work downtown, and if they couldn't afford to park, they were parking a couple of miles away in a not so good area of town. So it was dangerous. And so we organized people. Long story short, it was a huge event. It was really what put AFBU on the map in the community. And we won parking passes for downtown workers, $40 a month. So it was huge. And it really rallied the troops and made everybody say, oh my God, look what can happen if we all get together and demand something. So it was a big turning point, and it all came from listening and identifying that widely, deeply felt issue. So that issues column is super important to have. All right, moving on. This is just, I love the bullseye. One of my mentors way back kind of drew this and said, we got to find the people who are our core people, and we got to take the people who are like our threes and our fours and move them in to be fives, because that's who's actually going to do the work. And that's the goal of the structured organizing conversation, is to assess people, but also use those conversations to move people from being a three undecided to being a four. They're into organizing, and then moving them to being a five, they're going to help do the work. So let's get into my favorite part. I love structured organizing conversations because Jane McAlevey, she recently passed away, if y'all did not know. She was the preeminent organizer training in the country. She never lost a campaign, and she was really humble and really just, she knew what she was talking about. She knew what she was doing, and she just wanted to share her knowledge with everybody who was interested in learning. And she said that organizing happens through building and sustaining relationships, which we've heard a couple of times from people already tonight. And that's true. Um, Organizing conversations are the foundation of all of your organizing work, because nothing will happen without having these conversations and building and sustaining these relationships that you're building. And like Rose said, you're going to have these conversations over and over again, because you're going to have to build trust with people to move them into action. So, um, let's talk about the steps. These are the steps, and then we're going to go into each step one by one to really flesh it out a little bit. And then we're going to have a role playing exercise, or kind of like a fishbowl. Miranda and Rose are going to go through the script, and you guys are going to identify in the chat which part they're on in the process. And then we're going to go into breakout groups of 3 people each, and you're going to practice conversation on your own, but we'll pop in and check in on you if you have any questions. Okay, so the steps. And like I said earlier, this is an amalgamation of a bunch of different organizing trainings. So you may have heard these words before. They may be different words, but this is what we came up with. You're gonna first, also, it's very important that you do these steps in order. That's why they're numbered and not bulleted. So first, you're gonna discover the issues. Second, you're going to ignite them on those issues. Some people have historically said agitate, but we as a group decided we don't really like that word because it sounds and feels manipulative, and we don't want to manipulate people. We want to ignite their passion and, use that flame to drive them into acting. And we're going to lay the blame. We're going to frame the choice. We're going to make a plan to win and highlight victories, and we're going to inoculate and recruit, and then make a plan to follow up. Thorn, do you have anything to add here?
I know we're going to get into it a little bit more, but I just would not underestimate the importance of inoculating people. In like a labor organizing context, that means making them aware of the risks that can come with organizing. We have a right to a union, but the way that we get there can be like challenging and difficult, and people need to be people need to know that, so that they can then make that choice to take that risk, and then be prepared for when things happen.
That's an excellent point, and we should not underestimate that. That's a very vital step in this whole process. Bob, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much. I just have a question. What is the meaning of inoculate in the way it's being used? The word is being used in this situation.
Well, yeah, we'll get into that a lot more, but basically inoculate is kind of like the same thing in like the medical term, you inoculate yourself against a virus of, like COVID vaccine. We are going to give people the information that's going to make union busting more difficult, that they'll be more resistant to it because they'll have the information and the tools that they need and be prepared for that union busting attack, basically. So it's like a virus is going to attack your system, but you've got antibodies because you've been inoculated. So it's not going to affect you as much, if at all.
Got you.
Does that
Thanks.
help?
Thank you.
Thank you for asking a question. Okay, so step one, discover the issue. So this part is really important. This is where you're going to introduce yourself and you're going to let people know, the person you're talking to, that you're talking to them because you want to talk about your workplace or community issues. People will be suspicious if you just go up and start talking randomly for, they don't know what your end game is here. So your job here is to listen and discover what they care about most. And it's really important to follow what is called the 80-20 rule, which means listen 80% of the time and talk no more than 20% of the time. You don't need to demonstrate competency, but rather interest. And this was a really big thing for me to learn when I first started organizing and going out and talking to people, because I just started going into workplaces and telling workers all about this thing we're doing. We're trying to build this worker-led coalition, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And this is why, and this is what we're fighting for. And people would just kind of glaze over like, oh my God, is this lady ever going to stop talking at me? But when I learned about the 80-20 rule, I said, oh, maybe I need to be quiet. Because also like when you're nervous and you're feeling awkward, at least me, when I'm feeling nervous and awkward, my mouth just runs and runs and runs because I don't know what to do besides fill up the space. So get comfortable with just being quiet and listening. And people will respect that. If they feel like they're being listened to, they're going to talk. And they're going to tell you things. They're going to open up and ask follow-up questions to get them to come out of their shell and to tell you about things. And when you demonstrate that you are interested in what they have to say, like if somebody's talking with you and they seem like they really are interested in what you're saying, you're more likely to talk to them and to trust them and to let them know what you think genuinely. So do the same thing when you're having these conversations with people. Listen to them. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to go in and say, we're going to do all of this. You're going to go in and say, what's going on with you? How's work going? What are your issues? Just go with the conversation and ask follow-up questions. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that step? Thanks for the thumbs up, Wolfie. Okay. Um, step two, ignite. And like I said earlier, I've always learned this as agitate, but every time I try to kind of do this training, I'm like, I really hate that word, because it feels like you're like purposely poking somebody to get them riled up. And while you do want them to get passionate, you don't want to manipulate them. You don't want to push their buttons because that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for me to do that, and it doesn't feel good to feel like somebody's doing that to me. Um, and so you want to ignite their passion. You want to give them the courage. You want to encourage them, which Thorne pointed out to me the other day. Encourage literally means to give courage. So you want to encourage them to express their thoughts. You want to let them know that what they care about is something worth caring about. Like they're angry. They have a right to be angry about this, and that's okay. Ignite that flame. Get them fired up. Um, Thorne or Rose or Miranda, do y'all have anything to add to that?
I maybe just add real quick. When we have a problem at work, but we don't really have anybody that we can like team up with to try to do something about it, it does make the most sense to just try to self-regulate, let things go, and try not to worry about it. But if we start identifying potential solutions, then we get into a place where like it does make sense to let ourselves be frustrated or resentful or eager to make things different. But until we get to that point, it it's not just easier. Like you know, some people don't want to like be like pissed off all day, every day about something if it doesn't seem like it can change. Especially
Right.
people that have like been at a workplace for a long time or what have you.
Right, and that's a good point. And I think another part of this is, you're letting them know that what they're upset about is worth being upset about, and you're also empowering them by letting them know, hey, you're not alone in this. Like, we're also dealing with this. I'm dealing with this. Your coworkers are dealing with this. Your fellow working class people are dealing with this. So it makes people feel less isolated and less alone and less hopeless to do this part. All right, so now that you have gotten to the issue, you have ignited their flame about being angry about this and wanting change. Now you're going to ask them, and you're going to ask them who has the power to change these things and why haven't they done so? And the purpose of this, let me hold on, let me back up. It's important to also note that you're not going to tell people who's at fault. People generally have the answers. People have the solutions to their problems. You just need, as an organizer, to help pull them out so that they can see what's happening. So ask them, well, whose fault is it that you don't have what it is that you need? And why do you think that they haven't done so? And listen. This is another part where you listen and validate. Say, yeah, it is that person's fault that you don't have what you need. Um, and figure out the reason you ask them why they haven't done so is because it identifies a point of leverage or a pressure point that you might be able to use to your advantage in organizing for this change. And framing the choice. This one was for some reason a really hard concept for me to grasp the first couple of times I took this training, but it's pretty simple, I think. You're framing the choice for them. You're saying, okay, well, now that you know that there's this issue and that it's okay to be mad about it and you know whose fault it is, what do you think will happen if you don't do anything? It's not going to change, right? And also, and I didn't type it on here, but what would happen if you tried to make a change by yourself? And what would happen if we act collectively? Let them think about that. Ask them the questions. What do you think would happen? They'll come up with these answers because they instinctively know if they don't do anything, nothing's going to change. If they do something together, there's a greater chance that they might get what they need. And then you're going to make a plan to win, right? Now that you know what you want and who can give it to you, big question is how are you going to get it, right? So this is where you talk with them and this is the part where you're going to talk a little bit more because now you've already gotten most of the information that you need to help this person get activated. Sometimes words are hard. So you're going to make a plan, like, okay, we're going to do this to make a change. With that parking thing that we were talking about earlier for AFBU, our plan was we're going to go to the county commissioners and because they had some county decks that they needed more people to get parking, to use the parking because they needed more income. So like, okay, let's use that. So we went to them and we had a big rally. We had a petition we went out and canvassed. We got like 2,300 signatures, I believe, in a couple of 3 weeks. So that was our plan. And the plan will depend greatly on what the issue is and the context, of course. But the key is to make a plan. And in this part of the process, you also want to highlight a victory. Say, this is a plan that we could do to win. And here's an example of somebody else who organized in their workplace and got what they needed and made it happen. Thorne, do you have anything to add to that part?
No, not particularly.
Okay.
I'd love to hear what other people think, though.
Yes. Kurt, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I have a question about that specific example. It's pretty interesting.
Hmm.
Because it sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but in that case, you weren't going to the employer or the boss necessarily, which to
Mm-mm.
me that's like I thought that that's what unions were all about. It's like the worker versus the boss, but like you involved this totally separate outside entity as someone who could solve the problem that you were
Right.
having.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the reason that we did that is because many of the businesses around here, in our area are small businesses, and they were frustrated with it too because they were losing workers, because people couldn't afford to pay to park downtown. So we figured, why not harness the power of everybody who wants to get in on this issue, build goodwill in the community with the more, open-minded bosses and the rest of the community too, and get everybody involved. And so that's a really good point. It's not always the boss who can give you what you want. The part of this is to figure out, you know what you need. Well, who can give it to you? And be realistic and strategic about that. There are some things that you're going to have to get from your boss, like a raise. Or we helped a restaurant organize here called Green Sage. And one of the major things that they wanted was they wanted the company to actually compost and recycle like they were telling their customers they were doing, but they were actually throwing everything in the dumpster. So they had a petition and presented it, and they got that. That was one of the first things that they made happen. So, it just depends on what you want as to who can give it to you. Any other thoughts or questions? Bob?
Yes. So what I find is that oftentimes when there is a problem, people will not bring up the problems. They'll kind of suffer in silence. And what
Mm-hmm.
it would take is it would take for somebody else to speak out on that issue. And it's
Yep.
at that point that you'll see the kind of momentum building up with all the people that will come and back that up. And usually they would be willing to come forward uh, if they know that something like that has been done elsewhere successfully. So they
Mm-hmm.
would like to be, they would like to match and model what has been effective.
Absolutely. Those are really great points. The first one, people are not always willing to speak up. Um, that's really, really common. Nobody wants to be the first person to say something. Or, I think a lot of us, like before I started having conversations with people about workplace issues, I had internalized all of these issues that I had as a low wage worker as my fault. I thought it was my fault that I made low wages, that I had to survive on tips, that I had to have public assistance, all of these things that I thought were my fault, I didn't say anything about because I felt bad inside about them. But then I started talking to other workers and hearing that they had the same issues. And then that's when I started speaking up because I was like, wait a minute, this is not my fault. This is a systemic thing. And then I was pissed. And then I got fired up and I started telling everybody all about it. And that really helps other people to feel empowered, when they know that they're not the only ones dealing with that problem. So that was a really good point. And highlighting victories. That was the other point. Yes. Um, People need to know that you can win. They need to hear about other stories of victory so that they can feel inspired and feel like all is not hopeless, because it's not. We just have to get out of that mindset and realize that organizing can work. We just have to do the work. All right. And then inoculate and recruit. Inoculate, like I was saying earlier, is kind of like getting a vaccine
Talking so you can
against
open
union busting,
to be able to.
because the bosses, when we're talking about organizing labor specifically, they're gonna try union busting, and they have the same playbook. They use the same tactics every time in every situation. And we even have a bingo card that we have that's called Union Busting Bingo. and it's got all of the different tactics that they use. And when that happens, workers can just check that off in the box, and we go over the union busting tactics beforehand so that they know exactly what to expect. The boss is going to do this. They're going to gaslight you this way. They're going to tell you the union is a third party. They're going to have in the Starbucks here that tried to unionize a couple years ago, they had one-on-one meetings with each worker, and they were so gross that the manager like pinpointed what each worker cared about, and they manipulated them and scared them on that issue to get them to flip their vote from yes to no. The most egregious story that I heard was a trans woman who worked there. And as you may or may not know, Starbucks has excellent healthcare benefits. And that manager sat that young lady down and told her that if she voted to unionize, she would lose her transgender affirming care. And that scared her to death. She was like, that's the reason that I'm working here, to get these healthcare benefits. And how gross is that to really pick on somebody's fears and really just hit them hard, whatever it is they care about the most. So union busting is real, and it's really important to do this step so that people understand what they're up against. And then at the same time, when you're telling them what to expect, bring them in. Say, you know what, you're going to expect this, but join us and we'll fight this together. You don't have to go through this alone, and get a commitment from them to join the fight. Any thoughts or questions about this step? Vijay, hi.
Hi.
Good to see you,
Yeah,
friend.
something that my old like organizing mentor said, like we can be kind of people pleasers in this, and it's really
Mhm.
important to get a hard commitment, yes, no answer from them. So that way then you can either hold them accountable later, or you can like, further talk to them and figure out what might be holding them back. So I think
Mhm.
it's really important to get that solid yes, no answer.
Absolutely. Excellent point. You don't want to have any kind of ambiguity there. Um, Tabassum, I'm sorry if
Yeah,
I didn't say it correctly.
it's okay, Tabassum. So I have a question
Tabassum.
for we're organizing with undocumented folks, which is another
Mhm.
complication. So I'm just curious if anyone in the group has done any organizing. We're facing things like human trafficking and really horrendous labor exploitation in this area. And it's just like I feel like there's some more steps to, I mean, there's a lot of fear. It's really challenging for us to bring folks out
Mhm.
to confront these things that are happening. So a lot of things we're doing on behalf of them because the stakes are too high.
Absolutely. And we are encountering that here as well. Um, in fact, on October 22nd, we are going to be doing an Immigrant Know Your Rights training with the NC Justice Center and Southern Workers Assembly. Um, and this came out of that very same question. It's like, well, what do you do? The stakes are so high. Um, and I don't really have the answers right now because I haven't gone through the training yet myself. But I do know that this year, the Biden administration passed a new regulation that says that people who are undocumented but are involved in any kind of labor action, whether it's a union drive, unfair labor practice, anything, with the National Labor Relations Board, then they cannot be deported, that it's deferred action. Um, that's as much as I know right now. But if you want to learn more about that, I'd be happy to connect you with the NC Justice Center. And also, I would love for you to join that training on October 22nd at 5 p.m. We'll be putting out that through the Southern Workers Assembly email list as well. And if anybody else has any insight on that they would like to share right now, that would be great too. Okay. And see, that goes back to you don't have to demonstrate competency, just interest. And I feel like that's a really important issue that we all need to learn about because our immigrant fellow workers are being scapegoated and really oppressed as really badly. And we have to all stand up for each other no matter what your documentation status is. It doesn't matter. All right, the last step, and probably one of the most important steps, make a plan to follow up. So you've had this whole conversation with people, right? You've figured out what they care about. You've ignited their flame about it. You've given them some vision of a win. You've given them this inoculation and recruited them. Give them an action step. They need to leave this conversation with something to do. You know, whether it's have a conversation with your coworker, bring people to the next workers' assembly meeting if you have one in your area, and decide on a date and time to follow up. Like Vijay was saying, no ambiguity here. Make it a concrete thing, both the action step and the date and time to follow up. Um, I was supposed to find the person who said this quote down here at the bottom, and I totally forgot about that until right this very minute. But there was a labor organizer who said from the 60s who said that 90% of organizing is following up. And I'm here to tell you that's true. I feel like I spend most of my time answering signal chats and emails and making phone calls and having meetings. But as my friend Thorne said the other day, 90% make this 90% of follow-up work makes that 10%, which is our actions, so much stronger. It really builds the foundation for when it's time to take action on whatever issue that we're organizing around. So those are the steps and what each one of them means. Now, we're going to listen as Miranda and Rose go through a role-playing script of an organizing conversation. And if you'd like to, in the chat through each part of the conversation, just drop in what you think the portion is or the step is that they're on at that moment. So with that, Rose and Miranda, feel free to take it away whenever you're ready.
All right. Hey, Miranda, how's your day going?
Oh, it's going okay. It's been slammed all day.
Yeah, it looks like it's been super busy in here. When do you get off?
I'm working a double today. I haven't had a break all day. I'm so hungry. Luckily, I snagged some fries out of the window.
Oof, that is a long time to work without getting a break. When are you supposed to eat something?
Yeah, it seems like they think we're just machines that can keep going.
You're a human being, and you deserve to rest for at least a little bit. Eat something, reset.
You're right. I do deserve to be treated like a human being.
Why do you think the manager doesn't let you take a break?
Well, personally, I think it's because the owner wants us to be working the entire time we're on the clock.
Well, the then she's the person who has the power to grant or deny you and your coworkers a break.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she does have that power.
Okay, so what do you think would happen if you went to the owner and asked her to start giving you breaks?
Ugh, knowing her, she'd probably tell me that we don't have time to give people breaks, and if I don't like it, I can just get a job somewhere else.
So basically nothing would change.
Probably not.
What do you think what do you think would happen if all of your coworkers joined you and y'all went to her as a group to demand rest breaks?
I think we could have a better chance of getting our breaks. She can't tell us all to leave. Then nobody would be here to make the food or serve guests. This place would shut down.
Did you hear about what happened when the workers at Green Sage all signed a petition demanding that the company start giving them a detailed breakdown of their tip outs?
No, that's some hot tea. What happened?
Every single employee signed the petition and they presented it to the owner together. And the owner was not happy at first, but eventually agreed and started doing it within 2 pay periods from the time they presented the petition. Do you think any of your coworkers would be down to join you in telling the owner that y'all need a break during your shifts?
Oh, for sure. I think most of them would.
Great. How do you feel about getting them together after work to talk about signing a petition demanding breaks?
Well, we usually have our after shift drink at Tasty Diner after work, so we could probably talk about it then.
How do you think the owner will react to your petition?
I don't know. Chances are pretty likely she's going to take it really personally.
Yeah, she likely will, but if you're all standing together in solidarity, you'll be on level playing ground and have a much greater chance of success. Okay, can y'all meet me at Tasty on Monday night after work?
Yeah, that's when we get off. We usually go there Mondays anyway.
Okay, I'll call you on Friday to check in and see how your coworkers are feeling, and then we'll all meet on Monday night.
Sounds good. I'll see you then.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. So obviously that was a very simplified version of a organizing conversation, but we just wanted to get the gist of it, so that you can kind of hear what an organizing conversation would be like. It's not that technical, and they went through each of the steps. Um, do you have any feedback? Anybody have any questions or thoughts or anything you want to say here in this part? Chris, go ahead.
Thank y'all. That was really great. I've had organizing conversations with coworkers where we got to like, what would happen if we all did this? And somebody said, I think we would get it, but I would feel really awkward about it. I think I would feel really nervous and awkward. And I really just, that resonated with me. I think I understand, that feeling. So I was just wondering, has any of y'all ever kind of heard that kind of feedback? And what kind of organizing conversations might you have out of that? Thank you.
Mhm. Rose, do you want to answer that, or I can? I just want to give others a chance to chime in. Or Miranda.
I
Mhm.
I was just thinking, I guess, can you say a little bit more about the awkward feeling?
Oh, are you asking me, or are you suggesting that might be a good question to ask my coworkers? I
Oh no,
think,
I was like
okay.
asking you that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would have been a good question for me to ask my coworkers because, um, and it also actually wasn't in a great scene. We were like, um, to kind of dig that deep for me to say why. But I can say like, for me, just thinking about being around the person who had the power to make the decision would be weird. And I think that they would maybe feel, they would maybe just feel awkward, the boss that had the power to make the decision, and then kind of, um, having a tendency to carry that awkwardness ourself, kind of the way that Jen was talking about, feeling like it was, our fault or something that, you know, that kind of thing. I hope that answers your question, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, here I let me know if this makes sense, but I think of it in a sort of a trickle up way with the organizing that I'm doing now. Um, some of the ways that people in positions of power at my job are like some of the things they're doing affect us negatively, but they're doing those things because of the strained positions they're already in. And so for us to do this and say we want these people in these positions to have rights as well and to be able to, only work, these hours during a week because they're overworked and underpaid. They're in the fight too because they deserve rights as well. They deserve that same representation, even though we have to do it, we have to work around them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, great answer to a really good question. And you know, it is going to feel awkward. Absolutely. Change is never comfortable. Growth is never comfortable. It's always uncomfortable. So, um, and it becomes something that I feel like the more you do it, the easier it gets. Jesse, I see you had your hand raised, and then Sam was after that.
Yeah, is there another way to get to iterate that question of like, well, what do you think would happen? Because I think for in that moment, as I've, in the past when I've had conversations like this, when I get to a question like that, if I don't frame it correctly, I think it's all of a sudden this is an organizing conversation and it pulls, I think. I think it kind of pulls the curtain back all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard sometimes on the fly to make that question appear organically in the context of the conversation. But I think it's a really important one to have because I think it opens that space for them to keep answering the questions themselves instead of
Mm-hmm.
you wording it to them. So are there other ways to frame that question?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, you don't want to go verbatim by, these suggestions. Use your own vernacular, like I'm a food service person, so I'd be like, talking to a fellow line cook and be like, probably cussing a lot, but I'm not gonna do that here. Um, but be like, man, what do you think they'd do if we all went to like we had a situation where we didn't have hot water in our kitchen sink. What the heck, right? For like a couple of months. And we kept telling the manager, hey, we don't have any hot water. And I was having a conversation with them and trying to get them to be like, we need to all go together and tell them, hey, we're not going to work in this kitchen anymore if we don't get some hot water. It's disgusting. So it's just like you said, the way you frame it, using a different kind of whatever way that you speak, use that, like don't try to sound formal. Just be like, man, what do you think Sally would do if we all went in there and said, hey, we're not going to do this anymore because it's disgusting. Um, or we're going to call the health department or something, just don't change your vernacular to make it more formal than it needs to be. It needs to be comfortable and it needs to be genuine. Be yourself. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I think, yeah, it does.
Yeah. Just
Thank you.
use your own words,
Yeah, thank you.
basically, in your own tone of voice. Sam?
Yeah, I just had I guess I had a question for Chris. I was just that awkward feeling, I guess. Is it kind of like a guilty kind of feeling? Oh, I feel bad for making a ruckus kind of deal. Is that kind of what?
I think that's exactly right, Sam. Yep.
Okay. I guess I was just thinking like you could just kind of, reframe it like, yeah, you might feel guilty or bad for making it, but is it is it worth, getting these gains that you could get? Would you rather feel a little bit guilty now or bad or whatever, awkward? Or do you want to get you want to get a pay increase? You want to get more breaks? You want to get whatever you're going for? I guess you could just kind of frame it like that and say, is it worth, feeling a little bad now, but think of how you're going to feel when we win and, we all come together. I guess you could just kind of frame it like that.
Yeah, I would also add those in power don't want us to disrupt the status quo. And so they want us to feel like if we do disrupt the status quo, that we will be uncomfortable, that it will be awkward. That's what they want us to feel because it keeps going. Just know to hold space for, yes, this is going to feel uncomfortable. Yes, at times it's going to feel awkward, but knowing that, holding space for that, holding space for your comrades that also feel that way, but know that it is a necessary feeling to enact change.
Bob, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. So I think in situations like this, first you got to empathize with the person in the sense that you understand the kind of feelings they might be going through, and then gradually explain how a change or a positive outcome may be beneficial. So one of the ways that I've been trained, like, on a different forum, different aspects, is use feel, felt, and found. So I know how you feel. That's exactly how I felt. But what I found after doing A, B, and C is this is what the outcome was. So the person understands that you know where they are and that you felt the same way, because there's so many uh, issues that can affect the way a person feels. We come from different cultures, we come from different backgrounds, and there's certain things that have been taught to us either by our parents, our community, or even if we come from a different country, you know. And in certain instances, we feel like we don't want to stand up to the status quo. So it's the feel, felt, and found.
Very well said. So why don't we go ahead and practice feeling awkward? We're going to put everybody into groups of 3, and we'll pop in and out to check in with y'all and see how it's going. You don't have a script, but what you should do is there will be 3 of you, so each person take turns being the organizer, the worker, and the observer. And y'all talk about whatever issue that you're dealing with in your actual organizing life and see if you can go through these steps with each other. And the observer is going to observe and see what they see and give feedback to the other 2. This discussion that we just had was really robust, and we had intended to go into breakouts about 10 minutes ago or so, 12 minutes ago. But I just didn't want to stop this conversation because it was so good. So we're going to have about, I think, 15 minutes. So each of these run throughs, you're going to run through 3 conversations because each person takes a turn. Will be about 5 minutes each. And then we'll come back as a group and take some last minute thoughts and talk about the next session of this series. Screen up real quick so that you can see this here. Ooh, I did it. Yes. Success. Okay. Any last thoughts or feelings? Was that super awkward? Did it feel okay? Yeah, anybody want to jump in and say anything? Thank you, Ryan. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming to this organizing training. I know I had a lot of fun. I hope that you guys got some good information out of this. We would love to hear your feedback about how it went. This is the very first one that we've done. And we'd love to know how to make it better, what would be more useful, what worked really well. So please let us know. Chris, please go ahead.
I just had a question. How many sessions do y'all plan to do?
That's a good question. I am imagining it's going to be 4. We are actually going to meet soon to discuss that in specifically. But yeah, it's going to be probably at least 4. Because it's a lot to cover, and we also want to know what else y'all want to learn, because if we don't know it, we want to learn it too, and if we do know it, we want to share it. So along with your feedback about how this went, let us know what else you want to learn about, because y'all, there's nothing we can't do if we do it together. And like I said, if we don't know it, we can learn it, and we can all learn it together. So your assignment, like in a good organizing conversation, I'm going to leave you with an action step. Y'all are going to go back and practice your organizing conversations. You're going to map your workplace or your community if you're building an assembly, and find your 4s and 5s. Start that organizing committee. And next session, and remember in your map to write down the issues. Keep track of what issues people care about, because next session we're going to talk in much more detail about mapping and discovering issues, and then taking those issues and turning it into a campaign to win and build power. right? All right. Well, thanks so much, y'all. In solidarity, y'all. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, when is the next session?
We haven't scheduled it yet, but it will be in late October, I believe.
Okay. That's good. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks to Jen and AFBU and other folks who, put this together. That was great, and excited for the next one.
Me too. Thank you, Ben.
And for folks that are still on, we'll send out the recording, the slides, and a short survey to give any feedback, and we'll be in touch.
Heard.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Good night.